As the new president of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, is inaugurated, problems are already on the horizon with Israel already. In a meeting with the UN Security Council members, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz called on the international community to consider military action against Iran after a fatal drone attack last week on an Israeli-owned commercial shipping vessel in the North Arabian Sea. 2 sailors were killed in that attack, a British and Romanian national. And the U.S. and the U.K., along with Romania, have joined Israel, blaming Iran for the attack. So for more on this, I am joined by former UK MP George Galloway. George, thanks so much. I love talking to you about this stuff. George, let's first talk about these 2 leaders, just on the surface. Raisi is a hardliner and ultra-conservative, and Israel's president, Isaac Herzog, is on the far right, more so than Bibi Netanyahu. When it comes to getting along and establishing even just a dialogue, are we looking at a flat-out no, or is there any hope?
I don't think there's any hope of dialogue between those 2 parties. Both of them are new. Both of them are hardliners, as you say. Both of them have domestic constituencies to satisfy, and neither will ever talk to the other. But we have to hope that the United States, which of course pays for Israel and is the armorer of Israel, even though it's a nuclear-armed superpower in the region, it can't really operate without American authority because America pays all its bills. We must hope that the United States can keep Israel on a tight leash in this very fraught circumstance, because if, as the Israeli government says, it is ready to attack Iran, be sure that Iran is ready to attack back. And that's where the rest of us have to get worried, because we'll be drawn into it as sure as night follows day.
Now, you had Boris Johnson, getting back to that attack. He said that Iran should face consequences since it was a UK national that was killed in the attack. Do you agree, George?
Well, of course, we first have to ascertain whether Iran was responsible for it. Nobody has done that. The international powers, especially Britain and the United States, and Israel in this case, immediately found Iran guilty. But of course, Iran has itself been attacked. Its leading scientists assassinated in broad daylight. Its shipping attacked by unknown attackers. So there's a jamming up of the Straits of Hormuz with hardware, military hardware, from a flotilla, a naval flotilla of foreign countries. The situation's on a hair trigger, Farron, and if we're not careful, that hair trigger will be pulled by one side or the other.
You know, George, we also had Secretary of State Antony Blinken here. He came out saying that the U.S. is confident that it was Iran that carried out this attack. Now, let's just say it like it is. Past his prologue, and the U.S. has always stood with Israel. Is there any chance you think this wasn't Iran, but the U.S. is going to blindly always side with Israel? Because, let's face it, when there's always attacks against Israel, the U.S. tends to send them more support, particularly money.
Well, they were equally confident that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, of course.
Good point.
And that turned out to be a complete lie. So I no longer take pronunciamento from political leaders seriously. I want to see evidence. If Iran did do this, it should face consequences. One of my countrymen was killed, but nobody investigates the attacks that go the other way. I've lost count of the number of leading Iranian academics that have been assassinated in the street, almost certainly by Israeli-backed opposition figures, maybe even by Israel itself. Nobody investigates these things. Nobody is asked to face consequences for them. We need to dial down this aggression, dial down this tension. That's what the U.S. said it wanted to do when it said it would go back into the Iran nuclear deal. Maybe somebody that doesn't want the United States to go back into the Iran nuclear deal has staged this whole thing. How can we know? We ask the ancient Latin question, cui bono? Who benefits? Who benefits from increased tensions in the Persian Gulf? Sure ain't Iran, and it isn't us in Britain and the United States either.
And I do ask you, though, who do you think benefits if there is that conspiracy of, this happens and somebody's going to benefit in your expertise?
I'll give you...
Go ahead.
I'll give you two countries that very badly don't want the United States to get back into the Iran nuclear deal and to begin to end the tension between the West and the Islamic Republic in Iran. One of them is Israel, that's obvious. The other is less obvious. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the fountainhead of Islamist extremism, where 13 of the 19 hijackers that attacked your country came from, wants the United States on good terms with Iran like it wants a hole in the head.
George, I love having you on talking about this stuff because you always give us a different perspective that no one's looking at. Thanks so much, George. Appreciate it.
Thank you.